The air was thick with tension as John Carter, a human Navy SEAL trainee, stepped onto the cold metal floor of the intergalactic combat arena. The walls around him echoed with the sounds of the crowd, alien spectators from various corners of the galaxy, their eyes filled with excitement. These beings, with skin tones that shimmered in colors John had never seen, made noises that sounded almost like growls, mixed with high-pitched chimes. Their excitement was palpable, their attention fixed on the human in their midst. John's heart raced as he looked around. He had trained for this moment, prepared for the unimaginable, but nothing could fully prepare him for what lay ahead. He wasn't here to win. He was here to survive. The arena itself was vast, circular in shape, with towering walls that seemed to reach for the stars. The floor was slick and gleaming, a stark contrast to the dark, oppressive sky above. Far away, John could see a massive digital countdown flashing, ticking down the seconds until his battle would begin. Around him, alien warriors, gladiators from across the galaxy, watched from their seats in eager anticipation. John was different from them. He wasn't an alien warrior, bred for combat or born into the tradition of gladiatorial battles. He was a human, an earthling, a species that had never participated in such grand spectacles. But his mission was clear. He had to fight, not just for his life, but for the survival of his planet. "You're a joke, human," one of the aliens nearby sneered, his voice sharp, dripping with disdain. John ignored the remark. He had heard it all before. The humans were always the underdogs, always underestimated. And yet, they kept fighting, time and time again. This was no different. The Galactic Gladiator, a massive alien warrior who had never lost a fight, was about to face him. This was the battle everyone had been waiting for, the ultimate test. The Gladiator was an iconic figure, feared across galaxies for his brute strength and unmatched skill. His species, known for their terrifying physical prowess, had torn apart entire armies, conquering countless planets with ease. The Gladiator's reputation was legendary, and yet, no one had ever seen him face a human. John could feel the weight of his situation. It wasn't just any opponent he was up against. It was the Gladiator, a creature whose very presence sent shivers through the hearts of even the toughest beings in the galaxy. His race was notorious for its sheer power, and the idea that a human could stand a chance against him was laughable to the audience. As the countdown continued, the crowd grew louder. Whispers turned into mocking laughter. John could see the alien spectators gesturing, pointing, and snickering. They were all eager to witness what they believed would be a quick, painful end for this human who dared challenge their champion. Some even placed bets on how long it would take the Gladiator to bring John to his knees. John's pulse quickened. His instincts told him to be cautious, but his SEAL training told him to remain calm, to control his fear. Fear would be his enemy today. He had faced death many times before, whether in the jungles of foreign lands or the desolate wilderness of Earth. But this? This was different. There was no backup. There was no extraction plan. This fight would be a test of everything he had learned. The Galactic Gladiator stepped into the arena. The ground shook under his massive boots. The crowd went wild. The Gladiator was nearly 7 feet tall, his body built like a tank. His skin was a dark, slick sheen, like polished obsidian, and his eyes glowed with a malicious intensity. He carried a weapon that could only be described as a monstrous energy blade, crackling with blue electricity, ready to slice through anything in its path. John had never seen anything like it. The Gladiator was a walking weapon, and John was merely a man, a human in a world where strength and power ruled above all else. But that was exactly why John was here. He was here to prove that humans weren't just survivors, they were fighters. The Gladiator looked down at John with a cruel smile, his lips curling as he spoke in a language John couldn't understand. The tone, however, was unmistakable, mocking, taunting, as if he already knew the outcome. John's eyes narrowed. He could feel the heat of the Gladiator's gaze on him. The alien's words were lost in translation, but the message was clear: John didn't stand a chance. The gladiator raised his massive energy blade above his head, and the crowd fell silent in anticipation. John's body was alive with adrenaline, but his mind was calm. He wasn't afraid. He had been in dangerous situations before, situations where the odds seemed impossible. But he had survived them. And today, he would survive again. He would fight, and he would not lose. He silently took his stance, hands loose by his sides, ready for anything. His SEAL training flooded his thoughts: stay alert, never panic, and always think 2 steps ahead. His heart thudded in his chest, but he steadied his breath. The countdown reached its final seconds. The gladiator's hand tightened around the hilt of his blade. The air was electric with tension. The fight was about to begin. The galactic gladiator took a step forward, and the ground seemed to tremble beneath his feet. His eyes locked on John, glowing with an unnatural intensity. It was as if the gladiator could already taste victory. John felt every muscle in his body tighten. This wasn't just a battle of physical strength, it was a battle of wills. If he could survive long enough, he could find a way to defeat the gladiator. But for now, he had to stay alive. The crowd roared again, and the gladiator lunged forward, his blade cutting through the air with a loud crackling hum. The energy blade was a blur of light as it moved toward John, faster than anything he had ever seen. In an instant, John's instincts kicked in. He dove to the side, rolling across the floor of the arena just as the energy blade slashed the space where he had been standing. The gladiator's strike left a deep scar in the ground, sparks flying in all directions as the energy blade hummed with power. The crowd gasped, but their disbelief quickly turned to excited cheers. They hadn't expected John to avoid the strike. John didn't stop to celebrate his narrow escape. He was already moving again, his body flowing into another role as he positioned himself farther from the gladiator. The plan was simple: survive. The gladiator's strikes were like a storm, wild, unpredictable, and deadly. John's mind raced. He knew that brute strength alone wouldn't win this fight. The gladiator was powerful, but John was fast and agile. If he could use his training to outmaneuver the gladiator, he might find a way to land a blow. But he couldn't afford to make a mistake. John's hand reached for the small, hidden gadget attached to his wrist, the cloaking device that had been provided by Earth's top engineers. With a swift motion, he activated it, and his body shimmered out of view. The gladiator paused, his eyes scanning the empty space in confusion. The crowd fell silent. Where had the human gone? John's heart raced, but he remained calm. The cloaking device wouldn't last long. He needed to make his move quickly. As the gladiator swung his blade wildly in all directions, John silently moved behind him, watching his every move. The gladiator's arrogance had become his greatest weakness. He was used to overpowering opponents with raw strength, but John wasn't going to fight him head-on. Instead, he would use his environment, his speed, and his intelligence to his advantage. John's internal thoughts were laser-focused. He knew the gladiator could tear him apart with a single hit, but he also knew that strength alone wasn't enough to win. The gladiator had brute force, but John had something more valuable: strategy. He just needed to keep moving, keep dodging, keep looking for that one opening. The gladiator's arrogance and overconfidence had already begun to cloud his judgment. The longer the fight lasted, the more desperate the alien would become. And desperation? That was the key. As John crouched low, waiting for his next move, he could feel the energy in the arena building. The gladiator's anger was rising, his frustration palpable. The time to strike would come, but for now, John's only goal was survival. The countdown had reached 0, and the fight had truly begun. The arena's lights seemed to dim, and the crowd held its breath. The battle between human willpower and alien might was underway. The crowd fell into an expectant silence as the galactic gladiator roared and lunged forward, his massive body surging toward John with terrifying speed. The energy blade in his hand crackled with blue energy, lighting up the darkened arena like a streak of lightning. It was a weapon of unimaginable power, designed to cut through the toughest armor with ease. And the gladiator wielded it with terrifying skill. John's heart raced. He had been waiting for this, but the reality of facing such a beast in person was overwhelming. His SEAL training kicked in, though, and he moved without thinking, instinctively. As the gladiator swung his blade down, John dropped to a roll, narrowly avoiding the deadly arc of the weapon. The energy blade sliced the ground where John had just been standing, leaving a trail of sparks and molten metal in its wake. The gladiator didn't pause for a moment. His strike was only the beginning, and before John could react, the gladiator's blade was already coming back for another strike, faster and more precise than the last. The crowd erupted in excitement, knowing they were about to witness a human's swift and painful defeat. But John wasn't done yet. He dodged to the left, his body twisting in mid-air as he narrowly avoided another strike. The gladiator's attacks were like a storm, heavy, fast, and relentless. Each blow seemed to shake the arena itself, sending shockwaves through the floor. The gladiator's strength was undeniable, but John's speed and agility allowed him to evade some of the most devastating strikes. The clash of metal against metal echoed in the air, and John's senses were on high alert. His every movement was calculated, each step a dance of survival. But despite his best efforts, the gladiator's unrelenting assault was beginning to take its toll. The ground beneath John's feet cracked and splintered with each attack, and sparks flew through the air as energy collided with the floor. Sparks and debris littered the arena floor as John sidestepped another deadly swipe. The gladiator was fast, but John was faster. He had trained his entire life for moments like this, moments where speed and precision were the difference between life and death. John had learned to outmaneuver, to use his surroundings to his advantage. But no matter how much he dodged, the gladiator kept coming, never tiring, never hesitating. It was as if the alien was a force of nature, too powerful to stop. John's eyes darted around the arena, searching for anything he could use. The gladiator's attacks were too powerful, and John couldn't keep dodging forever. His mind raced as he tried to formulate a plan, but there was no time. The gladiator was closing in, and John was forced to act fast. A sudden roar from the gladiator shattered John's concentration. He had made a mistake, a momentary lapse in his focus. The gladiator saw it, and in an instant, he swung his energy blade with bone-crushing force. John barely had time to react. The blade clipped his side, and pain exploded through his body. He gasped, the world around him blurring as the force of the blow sent him flying across the arena. His body slammed into the hard ground with a sickening thud, and a wave of agony surged through him. The crowd cheered, thinking this was the end. The human had been struck, and surely, he would fall. But John's mind didn't focus on the pain. He had faced worse on Earth. He had endured far more than this. He lay on the ground for a moment, the weight of the blow crushing him. His body felt numb, his chest heaving as he struggled to breathe. But as his vision began to clear, something stirred inside him, a burning need to rise, to keep fighting. His muscles screamed in protest, but his mind was stronger than the pain. Thoughts of his fallen comrades filled his mind, driving him forward. He remembered Bonner, his mentor, the man who had taught him everything. Bonner had been there for him when the world seemed too dark. They had trained together, fought side by side. And Bonner's final words still echoed in John's mind, words that would never leave him: "We fight for those who can't." For humanity. Bonner had died on a mission, one that had prepared John for this very moment. Bonner had given everything for the cause, for the future of humanity. And now, it was John's turn to honor that sacrifice. John's hand gripped the cold floor beneath him. His fingers were slick with sweat and blood, but he didn't care. He pushed himself up, the sharp pain in his side reminding him that he wasn't invincible. But pain was just a barrier, and John Carter was a master at pushing past barriers. His mind was clear now. He could hear the crowd, but their cheers didn't matter. The gladiators' mocking laughter didn't matter. What mattered was his mission. What mattered was that he was still alive, still breathing, still standing. John's eyes locked on the gladiator, who stood across the arena, his energy blade glowing with an ominous light. The gladiator was confident, too confident. He had landed the first blow, and he knew it. The alien had expected the human to be weak, to fall quickly. But John was still standing, and that's what terrified him. The gladiator took a step forward, his towering frame moving with a predatory grace. John could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, pushing him past the limits of exhaustion and pain. He wasn't about to give up, not now, not ever. He had something to fight for, not just his own life, but the lives of everyone who depended on him. John gritted his teeth and took a step forward. His muscles screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for humanity, for his people, for Bonner, and for every person who had ever believed in him. The gladiator's eyes narrowed as he advanced, clearly frustrated by John's resilience. But John could see it now, the cracks in the gladiator's confidence. The alien might have been stronger, but John was determined. The gladiator's strikes were powerful, but they were also predictable. He was becoming more aggressive, more careless with each swing. The longer the fight went on, the more mistakes he would make. And that's when John would strike. The gladiator swung his blade again, aiming for John's head. But this time, John was ready. He dodged to the side, using the momentum of the gladiator's swing against him. The massive alien staggered for a moment, and that was all John needed. He was faster, more agile, and more determined than ever before. John's Navy SEAL training had kicked into overdrive. Every instinct, every lesson, every fight he had been through had led him to this moment. The gladiator was stronger, but John had something the alien didn't: resilience. John's body moved like lightning. His hand shot out, and for the first time, he landed a blow on the gladiator. The alien staggered, surprised by the human's sudden strike. The crowd gasped, and for a moment, the gladiator faltered. John was still standing. And that was the message. Despite everything, he was still in the fight. The crowd had been roaring with excitement, watching the intense battle unfold between John and the Galactic Gladiator. At first, it had seemed like an easy victory for the alien warrior. The gladiator's strength, speed, and brutal power had overwhelmed John from the start. But now, something had changed. John was no longer just a man trying to survive, he was turning the tables, using his mind and training to outwit his towering opponent. The balance of the fight had begun to shift. John's Navy SEAL training had prepared him for moments like this. He knew how to think on his feet, how to use his environment, and how to outsmart a stronger opponent. While the gladiator relied on brute force and predictable attacks, John was calm, calculated, and constantly adapting. His futuristic gadgets, which he had brought with him into the arena, gave him an edge that no one had expected. John took a deep breath as he backed up, moving swiftly along the arena's edge. The gladiator, still fuming with rage from John's earlier strike, charged at him again, swinging the energy blade with an intensity that could crush a building. But John was ready. John pressed a button on his wrist, activating the cloaking device hidden within his suit. In an instant, his body became invisible, blending with the surroundings, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air. The gladiator's eyes widened in confusion as he swung his blade through the empty space where John had been standing just a second ago. Sparks flew as the blade slashed through thin air. The gladiator growled, spinning around in frustration. He couldn't see John, but he could feel the heat of the cloaking device disrupting the air. His alien instincts told him that the human wasn't gone, just hidden, but that knowledge didn't help him find his target. John was behind him now, moving silently and quickly. He used the chaos to his advantage, staying out of sight and positioning himself in the perfect spot. As the gladiator swung his massive blade again, John appeared suddenly, appearing from the shadows with a holographic decoy in front of him. The decoy flickered to life, an exact copy of John, created by the advanced tech hidden within his suit. The gladiator, blinded by his rage, lunged at the decoy. His energy blade sliced through the fake image, and it disappeared in a puff of light, leaving only the sound of the gladiator's anger. But while the gladiator was distracted, John struck. In one fluid motion, he reappeared behind the gladiator, launching himself at the alien warrior's unprotected side. His fist, powered by the suit's enhanced strength, connected with the gladiator's ribs with a loud crack. The gladiator staggered, taken by surprise. For a moment, he lost his footing, just enough for John to exploit his weakness. The gladiator growled in pain, trying to recover, but John was already moving again, back on his feet, ready for the next strike. John knew he had the upper hand now. His opponent might have been stronger, but he was no longer facing the same fragile human from earlier. John had adapted, using his wits and the environment to outsmart the alien gladiator at every turn. The arena had been designed to test the limits of combatants, but it also provided John with countless tools to help him. It wasn't just about strength or speed, it was about intelligence and innovation. John's holographic decoys, now fully activated, flooded the arena with multiple false images of him. It was like trying to fight an army of Johns. Each decoy flickered and moved in different directions, confusing the gladiator even more. He swung wildly at shadows, his frustration mounting as he failed to land a hit. The crowd was stunned. This was not the kind of fight they had expected. Instead of a quick execution, they were witnessing an intense battle of wits. The arena lights flickered as the decoys moved in all directions, creating a disorienting effect on the gladiator. The energy blade swiped through the air, missing John by inches as he appeared in one corner of the arena, then vanished again, moving to a new location. The gladiator roared, more animal than warrior, unable to predict where John would strike next. John used his surroundings expertly. The metallic walls of the arena, the shifting shadows, and the various obstacles scattered throughout all became tools for his survival. The gladiator was focused on his own rage, unable to think past his primal instincts. But John, despite his injuries, was calculating every move, using the cloaking technology and decoys to stay a step ahead. John's suit was equipped with everything he needed for this fight. The stealth technology was his lifeline, but it wasn't just about hiding. It was about creating openings, making the gladiator feel vulnerable, and striking when he least expected it. He wasn't just hiding behind the decoys, he was also reading the gladiator's attacks, learning from each failed strike. The gladiator roared in anger, charging once more. His wild swings were desperate, but John could see it now, his opponent's overconfidence was his greatest weakness. The gladiator had assumed that his superior strength would win the day, but John had forced him to change his strategy. The alien warrior's movements had become slower, more erratic, and now, every swing felt less certain. John's heart raced, but his mind was cool. He was no longer just evading, he was now in control. As the gladiator charged, John ducked under the alien's blade and, using his speed, he closed the distance between them in a flash. The gladiator swung his energy blade downward, but John wasn't there. He was already to the side, delivering another precise strike to the gladiator's side. This time, the blow landed with a sickening crunch, and the gladiator stumbled backward. The crowd gasped. John had landed another solid hit. The gladiator, the once invincible fighter, was now on the defensive. Tension built as the gladiator took a step back, realizing the fight was slipping out of his control. For the first time, doubt entered the gladiator's mind. He had been so sure of his victory, but now, he was facing a human who had used nothing but strategy and ingenuity to keep him at bay. The gladiator's arrogance was quickly replaced with frustration. He swung his blade one more time, but this time, it was wild, his focus shattered. He had underestimated John, and now, he was paying the price. John's eyes narrowed as he saw the opportunity. The Gladiator was wide open, his guard lowered. John had learned the alien's movements, his predictable patterns. The energy blade came crashing down again, but John wasn't there. He was already behind the Gladiator, and this time, John didn't just evade the strike. He used the Gladiator's own momentum to unbalance him. With a swift movement, John pushed the Gladiator to the ground, sending the alien sprawling. The Gladiator's face hit the ground with a thud, and for a moment, the arena fell silent. The Gladiator slowly began to rise, a snarl escaping his lips. The crowd, once certain of his victory, was now unsure. The human had turned the tables. They could see it now, the Gladiator wasn't invincible. John Carter had found the chink in his armor, and he wasn't going to stop until the fight was over. The Gladiator's eyes burned with fury as he stood up, his body shaking from the effort. He looked at John, his opponent now no longer a mere human to be dismissed, but a worthy adversary. John wasn't just fighting for himself anymore, he was fighting for every human who had ever been underestimated, for everyone who had ever been told they couldn't win. He had become more than just a soldier, he was now the symbol of human strength, of resilience, and of the will to never back down. The Gladiator, for the first time, was on edge. He had no idea what John would do next. And that uncertainty was his greatest weakness. John didn't wait for his opponent to recover. He struck again, precise and swift, knowing that every second mattered. This fight wasn't over yet. But John had proven something, humans were no longer the underdogs. The balance had shifted, and John Carter was about to show the Gladiator just how dangerous a human could be. The air in the arena was thick with tension. The crowd, which had been roaring moments ago, fell eerily silent as the fight entered its climactic stage. John stood a short distance from the Gladiator, his breath heavy and his body aching from the brutal exchange of blows. Yet, despite the pain, his mind was sharp. He knew that this was the critical moment, his last chance to end the fight. The Gladiator, though injured, wasn't out of the fight yet. Blood trickled from a wound on his side, but his towering frame still exuded raw power. He growled, gripping his massive energy blade tightly, preparing for one final, devastating attack. John could see the alien's resolve burning in his glowing eyes, a mixture of rage and desperation. "This ends now," John muttered to himself, his voice firm. His hand moved to a compartment in his suit, pulling out Earth's most advanced weapon, a sleek, high-tech energy blade, developed by the finest minds of humanity. The weapon hummed to life, glowing with a brilliant blue light that cast sharp shadows across the arena floor. The Gladiator roared, charging forward with all the strength he had left. His energy blade glowed red, cutting through the air as he swung it with terrifying force. But John didn't flinch. He tightened his grip on his own blade and met the charge head-on. The two weapons collided with a blinding flash, sending a shockwave through the arena. The metallic clang of energy blades echoed, and sparks flew like miniature fireworks. The crowd gasped as the two combatants engaged in a brutal dance of close-quarters combat. The Gladiator's strikes were heavy and relentless, each swing of his blade threatening to overwhelm John. But John's agility and training gave him the edge. He ducked, dodged, and parried with precision, his movements a perfect blend of speed and skill. The fight was nothing short of a spectacle. John's energy blade moved like an extension of his arm, each strike calculated and deliberate. The Gladiator, on the other hand, relied on raw power, his attacks like a hurricane of destruction. The ground beneath their feet cracked from the sheer force of their blows. At one point, the Gladiator lunged forward with a wide slash, aiming to cut John down in one decisive move. But John sidestepped at the last moment, countering with a quick upward strike. The tip of his blade grazed the Gladiator's armor, leaving a glowing scar across its surface. The alien warrior snarled, swinging his blade in a furious arc, forcing John to backpedal. But John was unfazed. He had studied the gladiator's movements throughout the fight, learning his patterns and predicting his next move. The gladiator raised his blade high, preparing for a downward strike that could split the ground in two. John knew this was his chance. Timing his move perfectly, he stepped inside the gladiator's reach, avoiding the crushing blow by a hair's breadth. With a sharp twist of his wrist, John's blade connected with the gladiator's weapon at just the right angle, forcing it out of the alien's grip. The gladiator's massive energy blade flew from his hand, spinning through the air before clattering to the ground several feet away. The crowd collectively held their breath. The towering warrior, once seemingly invincible, now stood unarmed and vulnerable. The scene was one of pure cinematic intensity. John stood over the disarmed gladiator, his energy blade humming with power. The brilliant blue light illuminated his face, a mix of exhaustion and determination etched into his features. His chest heaved as he stared down at his opponent. The gladiator, on his knees, looked up at John with a mixture of disbelief and anger. His arrogance, which had been his greatest weapon, was now shattered. He had underestimated the human, and now he was at the mercy of the very species he had mocked. The arena fell silent, the crowd frozen in anticipation. Even the announcer, who had been narrating the fight with relentless enthusiasm, had stopped speaking. All eyes were on John as he raised his blade, ready to deliver the final strike. As he prepared to end the fight, John hesitated for a brief moment. He could hear the faint echoes of his mentor's voice in his mind: "We fight for those who can't. For humanity. But we never become like them." John looked at the gladiator, who was now defenseless and kneeling before him. He thought of the countless lives that had been lost in this intergalactic conflict, of the humans who had been enslaved, and of the countless arenas where others like him had fought and died for the entertainment of alien overlords. He tightened his grip on the blade, his mind racing. Would killing the gladiator prove humanity's strength? Or was there a greater victory in showing mercy? The crowd began to murmur, restless from the delay. But John didn't let their noise rush his decision. Instead, he took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. John lowered his blade slightly, but his eyes remained locked on the gladiator. "You fought well," he said, his voice carrying a weight of authority that silenced even the whispers in the crowd. "But humanity isn't just about strength. It's about resilience. About knowing when to fight, and when to stop." The gladiator's eyes narrowed, his pride refusing to let him show weakness. But deep down, he knew he had been defeated, not just physically, but mentally. John turned, raising his energy blade in the air. The crowd, unsure at first, erupted into cheers. They had expected a violent end, but what they had witnessed was something far greater, a victory not just of strength, but of humanity's core values. As the arena's gates opened, John walked out, his head held high. His body ached, and his mind was weary, but he knew he had done the right thing. He had proven that humanity wasn't a species to be underestimated, not just because of their technology or their warriors, but because of their ability to rise above even the darkest challenges. The gladiator, still kneeling in the arena, watched as John left. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never known before: respect. This wasn't just a fight. It was a turning point in the relationship between humans and the rest of the galaxy. And John Carter had become a symbol, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity would always find a way to prevail. The moment the gladiator hit the ground, unconscious and defeated, a hush fell over the massive alien crowd. For what felt like an eternity, there was only silence, broken only by the faint hum of John's energy blade as he lowered it to his side. His chest heaved with exhaustion, his muscles burning, but his grip on the weapon was steady. The victory was undeniable. John Carter, a human from Earth, had done the impossible. Slowly, the crowd began to stir. Murmurs of disbelief spread like wildfire before erupting into an overwhelming roar of applause and cheers. The arena, once filled with jeering spectators certain of John's defeat, now echoed with chants of admiration. "Who man? "Who man?" the aliens called, their voices united in acknowledgement of the feat they had just witnessed. John stood tall in the center of the battlefield, his energy blade flickering out as he deactivated it. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. His body bore the scars of the brutal fight, but his mind was consumed by a deeper ache, a sense of loss and reflection. He looked around the arena, its shattered floor and scorched walls a testament to the ferocity of the battle. But his gaze wasn't focused on the destruction. Instead, he saw faces, those of his fallen comrades. Bonner, his mentor and friend, appeared vividly in his mind's eye. Bonner had been the one to prepare him for this fight, sacrificing his own life to ensure John was ready for this pivotal moment. His final words played over and over in John's mind: "We fight for those who can't. For humanity." John clenched his fists, a mix of pride and sorrow welling up inside him. "I did it, Bonner," he whispered under his breath. "We did it." As the applause thundered around him, John took a moment to soak in the scene. The Gladiator, once a symbol of strength and dominance, lay motionless at his feet. His massive frame was dwarfed by the enormity of what had just occurred. John wasn't just a soldier standing in an alien arena. He was a representative of Earth, a beacon of hope for humanity. This wasn't just his victory, it was a triumph for all humans, a declaration that they were not to be underestimated or dismissed. He turned his gaze upward, looking toward the stars visible through the open dome of the arena. The galaxy was vast, filled with races and civilizations that had once mocked Earth's perceived weakness. But today, they had seen the truth. Suddenly, the arena's massive holographic screens flickered to life. The cameras zoomed in on John's battered but resolute face, broadcasting his image across the galaxy. The entire network of alien civilizations was watching, their attention captured by this moment. John stepped forward, his voice calm but firm as he spoke into the microphone embedded in his suit. To all those watching, he began, his words carrying the weight of an entire species. Humanity is not weak. We may not have the most advanced technology. We may not have the largest armies. But we have something stronger. He paused, his eyes blazing with determination. We have heart. We fight for our freedom, for our survival, and for the future of our children. We may stumble, but we will always rise again. And when we fight with everything we have. Remember this: humanity may not be the strongest, but we will win. As John's message echoed across the galaxy, the camera panned to the Gladiator's still form. The once dominant warrior, whose race had prided itself on its supremacy, now lay defeated. For centuries, the Gladiator's kind had viewed themselves as untouchable, their strength unmatched. But today, they had been brought low, not by superior technology or brute force, but by the resilience and ingenuity of a single human. The realization spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Empires that had mocked humanity now found themselves re-evaluating their perceptions. If one human could achieve this, what could humanity as a whole accomplish? In the arena, the alien spectators couldn't contain their awe. They had come expecting to witness a human's defeat, to revel in the Gladiator's show of dominance. Instead, they had been treated to a display of courage, intelligence, and sheer willpower that left them speechless. Some of the alien nobles in the VIP stands exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions betraying a newfound respect, and fear, for humanity. The chants of "Who man" grew louder, spreading throughout the arena and spilling into the streets of the alien city. For the first time, humans were seen not as prey or as weaklings, but as equals, or perhaps something even greater. As John exited the arena, the cheers still ringing in his ears, he was met by a group of human prisoners who had been forced to watch the fight. Their faces, once filled with despair, now shone with hope. "You did it, John," one of them said, tears streaming down their face. "You showed them what we're made of." John nodded, his expression solemn. "This was just the beginning," he replied. "The fight for our freedom is far from over. But today, we prove that we can stand against them. And we will keep fighting until every human is free. Back on Earth, news of John's victory spread like wildfire. Across the planet, humans celebrated, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that they were no longer alone in the galaxy, and no longer seen as weak. But the message wasn't just for humans. Alien civilizations across the stars received the broadcast, and their leaders watched in stunned silence. The Gladiator's race, once supreme, now faced a new reality. Humanity was not a species to be ignored or underestimated. John's victory became a symbol, a rallying cry for all oppressed beings across the galaxy. His fight in the arena was more than just a battle, it was a turning point in history, a moment when humanity rose to claim its place among the stars. As John boarded the ship that would take him back to Earth, he looked out the window at the stars. The galaxy was vast, and the challenges ahead were daunting. But for the first time, he felt a sense of peace. He had proven that humanity could not only survive but thrive in the face of adversity. And as long as there were humans willing to stand and fight, the galaxy would never be the same. This is just the beginning, John thought, a faint smile on his lips. They wanted a fight. We'll show them what humanity can do. The stars shimmered in the distance, and John knew that humanity's journey was far from over. But for now, they had triumphed. And that triumph would echo through the cosmos for generations to come. The news of John Carter's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On countless planets and within the grand halls of alien empires, the story of a single human defeating the Gladiator, a warrior regarded as invincible, was recounted with disbelief and awe. For generations, Earth had been dismissed as a backwater planet with primitive technology, barely worthy of notice. To most alien civilizations, humanity was little more than an afterthought, a species that could be conquered or ignored at will. But now, the perception had changed. John's triumph was more than just a win in the arena. It was a symbol of humanity's strength, ingenuity, and unyielding spirit. The mighty Gladiator, a warrior bred for battle and victory, had fallen not to superior technology, but to the relentless will and clever tactics of a human soldier. On distant worlds, alien factions began to reassess their strategies. If one human could achieve this, what might a united Earth be capable of? Some, particularly the smaller or oppressed civilizations, saw hope in humanity, a potential ally in their own struggles for freedom. Others, particularly the dominant galactic powers, saw a threat. Back on Earth, John's name became synonymous with resilience. The story of his fight was broadcast across every screen, his victory a rallying cry for humanity. Children looked up to his image with awe, seeing in him a hero who had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. Adults, many of whom had long felt helpless against the oppressive weight of alien powers, now stood a little taller. Leaders from Earth's fragmented nations began to see the importance of unity. For too long, humanity had been divided, squabbling among themselves while alien empires loomed over them. John's victory was a stark reminder, the only way forward was together. In the Galactic Council chambers, panic simmered beneath the surface. The members had long believed that Earth posed no threat, a world of minor consequence in the grand scheme of the universe. But John's victory had proven them wrong. If one human can do this, one alien ambassador muttered, staring at a holographic replay of the fight, what happens when they come together? As the dust settled, John found himself standing on the balcony of a high-rise in Earth's capital, gazing out at the sprawling city below. The cheers of the crowd still echoed faintly in his ears, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The fight had been won, but at a cost. He couldn't shake the images of his fallen comrades, friends and mentors who had given everything so that he could stand here today. Bonner's face flashed in his mind, his voice a quiet whisper, "We fight for those who can't." John's hand clenched into a fist. The galaxy was vast, and Earth was still vulnerable. His victory was only the beginning, a single step in a journey that would require countless more sacrifices. But in his heart, he felt a flicker of hope. The fight had proven that humanity was capable of greatness. They were no longer just survivors, they were contenders. Elsewhere, the ripple effects of John's victory began to take shape. On a distant planet oppressed by the same alien race that had controlled the arena, a group of rebels gathered around a flickering screen. They watched in awe as John's message echoed through the galaxy: humanity fights with everything we have. And we will win. One of the rebels, a grizzled leader with scars from countless battles, turned to his comrades with a glimmer of determination. If humans can stand against them, so can we, he said. But not everyone celebrated. On the homeworld of the Gladiator's race, the loss was a humiliation. Their once proud warrior caste seethed with anger, and their leaders vowed revenge. Plans were set in motion for a retaliation that would remind the galaxy of their strength, and crush humanity before it could rise further. Earth's leaders wasted no time. John's victory had bought them a moment of breathing room, but they knew the galaxy's response would be swift and brutal. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, developing new weapons and defenses. They studied the alien technologies John had faced in the arena, reverse engineering what they could to give humanity an edge. John was at the center of these efforts, sharing his first-hand knowledge of alien tactics and strategies. He spent hours training Earth's next generation of soldiers, ensuring that they would be ready for the battles to come. But he also took time to speak to the people, delivering messages of hope and resilience. This fight isn't just about survival, he told a gathering of young recruits. It's about proving that we belong. That we have a right to stand among the stars. One evening, as the preparations continued, John found himself in the command center of Earth's new interstellar fleet. Before him was a massive holographic map of the galaxy, dotted with countless stars and planets. The map was a reminder of both the enormity of the task ahead and the boundless opportunities it presented. Humanity was still a small player in a vast and dangerous universe, but they were no longer alone. John's gaze settled on a cluster of planets marked in red, territory controlled by the Gladiator's race. "They'll come for us," he said quietly to one of the fleet commanders standing beside him. "Let them try," the commander replied with a grin. "We're ready." John smiled faintly. For the first time in a long while, he felt not just the weight of responsibility, but the spark of anticipation. The galaxy was vast, and humanity's story was only just beginning. As John turned to leave the command center, he paused for a moment to look back at the map. His mind raced with possibilities, alliances to form, battles to fight, and victories to achieve. This is just the beginning, he thought. They wanted to keep us in the shadows. But now, we're stepping into the light. The holographic stars shimmered before him, each one a challenge and a promise. Humanity's war for survival was far from over, but now they knew the truth: they were capable of anything. And as long as there were humans like John Carter, willing to fight for their place in the galaxy, nothing could stop them. The stars awaited. And humanity was ready.